I think every artist, if they're being honest with you, is going to say, you kind of never let it go because um, unless they have 1,000% control over when, they say, I'm totally done with this mix. A lot of times though, no person is an island. We're all collaborating with, as I was saying, mixing engineers and mastering people. And there's usually a period that you're working to get that done. And so, or you're back ending into a release date that you've planned and you've got to turn it in because you got to get on with the liner note or, all of the stuff and the marketing and everything that goes along with it. So you have to stop somewhere.
This is Rob Ruckus.
Hey, this is Kate Clover.
Hey guys, it's Nick Collins here from The Effect and Better Strangers.
Hi, my name is Madeline Rose.
Hey, it's Ben McKelvey.
It's Tim Howard here from Mike and the Mechanics.
Hello, I'm Amanda Lehman.
I'm Billy Harvey.
What's going on, everybody? I'm Casey Sampson from the band Twist Stop.
Hey, it's Tony from Fastball.
Hello, everybody. My name is Isaiah Mitchell.
Hey guys, it's Matt here from the White Lakes.
You're listening to Almost Famous Magazine.
Come join us for this interview. Check it out, Almost Famous Magazine.
Hey everyone, welcome back to The Hang right here on Almost Famous Magazine. We appreciate all of the people who have subscribed, all of you who have put comments down below. Please share this as we continue to bring you fantastic creatives, both in the world of music, art, acting, comedy. Today we are so fortunate because we have a singer-actress. So today's going to be like a twofer. And we have with us singer, composer, and producer. She is busy. You've probably heard her music in movies such as American Wrestler, Crash. She's acted in movies such as Guardian Angel, One Night with the King, The House of Sand and Fog, and others. It's just to name a few. And if that's not enough, she is also dedicates her time to charitable causes that are focused on many women's health areas worldwide. So I am so excited to welcome Shani to The Hang today. Thanks for hanging with us.
Hello, thank you. I'm happy to be here.
This is going to be fun because, like I said, it's kind of a twofer. Sometimes we just get new musicians, or sometimes we just get actors. We're gonna dive into everything today. But as those who have joined us before know, we kind of have a kind of a launch pad where we start, and it leads us into an interesting conversation. You started in music, right?
Yes.
Did music find you, or did you find music? How did that come together for you so that you knew in your heart, your soul, your mind that that was something you were passionate about and wanted to pursue?
Well, excellent question. Music absolutely came to me because my household was filled with it. And my father played drums at home and also out. He guested for different artists from time to time, but couldn't pursue it professionally because he took on my grandfather's business at one point in time, but always shared with me and imparted in me some of the greatest music ever. And that absolutely shaped my whole life from that point. So, it would, if you can get this visual of a little girl, my dad would be playing the drums and I would be singing and dancing next to him. And then took it a step further, would kind of put me on his knee and put my hands on the sticks with him and kind of gave me the sensation that I was playing as well. And even though that's cute, I truly think it formulated something in me about rhythm. That, you might think, well, why didn't you become a drummer or a percussionist or whatever? And I do play a little bit of percussion live when I'm doing shows, but not at the level of, people like Sheila E. and such. But I do play. But I think that gave me a really strong sense of rhythm early on. And his incredible collection of music were just some of the greats. And that really gave me my sense of song structure and melody. More so than I would even say as a singer, because it was, male and female and bands and all the above. So it was just getting a good understanding of production and songwriting.
Who were some of the artists that your father introduced you to, especially since he was a drummer? I think this will be an interesting answer because drummers sometimes have very unique taste in who they listen to.
He was pretty eclectic, but obviously leaned more so to, rhythm and blues more so than rock, I would say, although like kind of soft rock was definitely in the mix. And then vintage stuff. So we had everything from Motown to Elvis Presley, but then more towards, I would say, Stevie Wonder, the Doobie Brothers. I'm just going off the top of my head. Steely Dan. Um, gosh, I mean, and pop records too. I mean, anything that was of the day that was also in the household, but it was always leaning more towards rhythm and blues, I would say.
So once you started to realize that those pieces were kind of coming together, what were some of the early kind of performing experiences you had, and how did you kind of, land on the singing and start to mature that to where you could learn how to use your voice to represent these songs that you were hearing?
So, I mean, as a kid, I grew up in Hot Springs, Arkansas, so I didn't have, huge opportunities to go out and really kind of study to be a pop singer, if you will. But I pursued, as a kid, I would do things like community theater, and I auditioned. A friend of mine took me to a community theater, and I think I was 8, third grade, in the summer, and I did a play where I didn't expect it, but I ended up being the lead in a musical, and that kind of gave me that push that I could combine both singing and acting as a full performer, and I appreciated artists like that did that as well. But then, my parents we wanted a normal childhood, if you will. I wasn't going to be that kid that sort of gave it all up and went somewhere to become a child, whatever. I mean, it wasn't my reality. Perhaps if I lived in a different city, it might be different. I don't know. But I really am grateful that I had kind of that small town, everyday America kind of upbringing, and when I was in school, I did school. I was in student council. I was a cheerleader. I was in all the groups, and, whatever was timely and current, I fought for it and did all those things, that you do in school. And music was sort of something I did at home, more or less. And then when I was old enough to go into choir and some of those things in high school, I did that. But the real plan was that we were going to move, and I would come to California to pursue my work professionally in study, which is what we did.
So did you go through a university program for music and theater and art, or did you study something else?
So interestingly enough, that was the original plan, to move, and I would be a resident, because the tuition would be less expensive being a resident. So my parents and I, because I still am currently an only child, and I was fortunate that it didn't. I still am. Yeah, it wasn't like I was and suddenly something changed. But we moved out here, and and basically, I didn't have any other siblings that I had to rival for that. So, but I'm sure that if I did, they would have been cool with the idea of coming to California. So we moved when I was still in high school, and left at a kind of a pivotal time because I was a junior in high school. I only had 1 year left, But for me, I had been in the same school from grade 1 all the way. And it was one of those situations where all the kids each year, That's kind of rare unless you're in a small town, I think. So I was ready. I was ready for tackle the world, And we moved here. We moved to Southern California, and I had been referred to some people in the industry that were friends of friends or relatives, and was kind of told, you need to connect yourself into Screen Actors Guild and this and that and the other. And I just started finding private study because I wasn't of college age yet. And once I did that, I studied with some incredible people, notably like Seth Riggs, for example, was my vocal coach, and his associate, Brad Chapman. Seth worked with Michael Jackson. He worked with so many incredible people and was very accessible. and I studied with him. And as I kind of got my feet wet and started learning how things worked, it was like, oh, you really need to be with the right people. And university became something that I wanted to do because I wanted to explore other things. That's because that was my trajectory. For someone else, if they were going to go into musical theater, or perhaps it would be different. But for me, as a pop singer, and for what I wanted to do, that was the route for me.
Let me ask you this. It's interesting because I you said you were from Hot Springs?
Yes.
So just for the folks watching us, I've been to Hot Springs.
You have?
That's quite, moving from there to Southern California is a bit of a culture shock.
Huge.
Like how did you cope with that to adjust yourself going from somewhere like Hot Springs to a Southern California? Because I think that a lot of people may think that, oh, you just move, but it's not really that. It's so much more.
No. I mean, good thing is we had come to Southern California on vacation, a family vacation. I think I was maybe 13, and did Disneyland and did Hollywood and, whatever the tourist stuff. So I, again, was even more sold. I was like, let's go, let's do it. But as you said, it's exactly what you described, that fish out of water thing. And it doesn't go away quickly. I mean, and I was, thrown into school. I mean, I was suddenly in a school with more people in that grade than were in my entire high school, I mean, you're just a number. You don't forget about knowing all the kids. You're just a number. And I mean, if you picture all those sort of after school specials or TV or film where the kid is, the girl's walking with her books and, it's like, that was me. I was just walking down the hall, just so uncomfortable. But I knew, I wanted my education to still be important, and I wasn't going to give that up. I just applied myself. It was like school is school. I leave here and I go and I do my other stuff. I wasn't trying to be a socialite or anything, it was just like, let's get through this. But yeah, I mean, things like you have to get a new driver's license. You can't drive, you have to start all over. You have to learn everything. You have to learn the streets. You have to learn where you are. And it's a big city. Los Angeles is a big city. It's not just Los Angeles. As everything in Southern California is like, today we're going to Orange County and here we're going to the desert. And, it's just, we drive a lot. So it was a big, big transition for my family, but we don't regret it at all.
Oh, I can imagine, because look, that led us to having this conversation today. 100%. So I'm glad you moved.
Thank you. Me too.
I know you did it all to ultimately end up here, I'm sure.
Yes. That's right.
So now I was looking on online. You have a lot of releases. You've got a lot of singles. I think a couple albums. You've done a lot of work. For how many years have you been recording now? Like, how did you, once you got there, end up starting to really record and realize that the writing process was something that you wanted to do, right? Singing is one thing, but then there's writing and creating. Yes. And, how did that start to kind of come together for you so that you landed with a number of songs in a genre that brought you to the point of recording?
Great question. So I didn't, as a kid or as a youngster, you don't think that I don't want to say you don't think you're going to be a songwriter, but you sort of perceive yourself, or I did, let's say, as a performer, as someone who was the interpreter of the music. But there is a place where it kind of shifts. And I did sort of play around when I was younger, as far as like I would get little ditties in my head, but I didn't take them seriously. And it wasn't until I, came out here and had access to recording studio, people around me that were close, we would do stuff at home, and it didn't necessarily mean it was good, but I think I got better at it, and I got introduced more and more to others that were, sort of studio rats. And so I started realizing I had a knack for it, I guess, as a collaborator, and that gave me more confidence. And then I started performing in a nightclub, which was an international nightclub with a lot of Middle Eastern expatriates that had come to Los Angeles, and I was invited to be the sort of American singer, there. But what was super engaging for me was that it was exploring these new sounds and rhythms and melodies and nuances that had never been a part of my experience before. So that then gave me this new sort of inspiration that, hey, I really want to do something unique. I want to combine my influences with some of this other stuff and create a new palette that hasn't seemingly been explored before, which then sent me on a path of like, I'm going to make an album now. I'm no longer a singer looking for songs. I'm going to make an album and I'm going to be an artist. So it sort of is like your question, did music find me or did I find music? It was an evolution in that way.
You brought something up interesting that we'll kind of take a little left turn here. But I think it's a good discussion point. How you start performing this nightclub and you're suddenly taking in other influences that are more international, and then the light bulb goes off and you say to yourself, I'm going to create my own sound, right?
Yes.
Now, not easy, right?
No.
I'm interested in just how you did that, and the reason being is this, right? Because you picked and chose things.
Yes.
And you try to. It's kind of like making a stew, right?
Yes.
But today, we had someone on just a few days ago who goes, everyone's in music now, right? And it's so hard to stand out, and it's so hard to find that uniqueness so that you're not vanilla in a crowd anymore. That evolution, like, how did that happen, right? How did you decide, okay, I want a little of this, I want a little of that. You put that together and make your sound, and then you owned it and it became your brand. That always intrigues me because I think that's one of the hardest parts that some people don't really understand. That's a lot of work to do that.
It is. And another great question. I love all your questions because they're so nuanced. So let's go with that sort of stew analogy that you just gave, right? There's only so many ingredients when you're making something, right? When you're putting a stew together. But sometimes it's that one spice or it's that couple of vegetables that really, send it from being Spanish to Middle Eastern or Italian or French, right? It might be the same vegetables and the same, core ingredients. So it was a bit like that where, okay, we have drum, bass, guitar, keyboards, percussion. Now what? What are we doing here? How Western are we going to be? How, what musical scale are we going to be in? Are we in major key, minor key? So it's sort of like, decisions to be made, and they're not always going to be quite right. You just have to try it. And then there's a process of, does the listener get it? And when I mean the listener, it was the powers that be, the people that were in a position to take you to the next level. And that was never smooth. That process was always like banging your head against a wall to try to get people to understand. I know this isn't something you've heard before. I understand that, but could we go on this ride together, Yeah. I also, not tooting my own horn, but I was a little bit ahead of a curve because I was traveling to Europe a lot for touring. I was touring. By this time I had started touring, which I'm sure you're going to ask about, but the person who later became my husband, who was also quite famous singer, and asked me to join his band. And that came from those nightclub days. And so touring around the world was a chance to hear that not everything that was on my radio back home was what people in Paris are listening to, or people in London are listening to, or Germany. So electronic music that we all take for granted now, which we call EDM or dance or whatever, and there's all these subsidiaries of what EDM is or dance music. But there was a time when, electronic infused music was new. and the sort of sampling, if you recall, sampling was a thing. Oh, it's sample. So that was very normal in Europe. And so my idea was at that time, hey, this is coming to the United States. So why don't I go that route? Why don't I adopt yet another something that really wasn't part of my background and merge these two things together? And that was technically my first album. And again, was like, how do you make sense of this to a record label? So I went through a lot of that stuff. It's been a very organic process.
And that's interesting, because I think some people don't realize it. I mean, you have to take in things so that you can decide what the flavor of that stew will be, right?
Yes.
You have to take in these experiences, and nowadays so many people live an experience through these devices, but they don't. They're not in an experience. People struggle to be in a moment, take in their surroundings.
Right.
Hear the sounds, the noises, the smells, right? I mean, to put yourself in that and then be able to pull it together and go, okay, I'm going to change this, I'm going to change it. I think I think that's something that's kind of missing a little bit, because how we've come to this sameness in a lot of music these days. I mean, it's just my opinion, but
so true. I think a lot of that has to do with, this is the blessing and the curse of technology, because as you just said a minute ago, who isn't in music now, right? Because it is so easy to digitally create something, put it out on the platforms, and call yourself an artist, right? I mean, it's not, there's not really gatekeepers anymore. But at the same time, what technology did was it gave these tools where there are a lot of samples available. There are things like GarageBand and many other things that can take someone that's not a totally trained musician, but put stuff together. And then you've got, let's not even go into AI. I mean, that's a whole other looming thing in all of our artistic fears now, is that AI will replace us. And, we've been using AI for a long time to our benefit when it comes to editing and making recording easier. We've been using AI. We just didn't call it that. We just called it the tools, Pro Tools and whatever. And everything I record is on Pro Tools. So it's not an endorsement for Pro Tools, by the way. It's just a point.
Well, no. You're making a great. You're making a great point. I mean, because at what point do the tools take the human out of the humanity of music?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And every beat should not be perfect.
Right.
Right? There should be some swing, a little sway, a little,
true.
It's okay to fall off a beat if you know what's going on, and but the technology can't do that. No. It has no feel.
No.
But I think, I'm sorry.
No. To your point, I think there's another thing that often happens, which is very normal in the music business, that tracks will be created. So you might have a guy that's really great at making beats, making tracks, and those tracks are really cool as a standalone, but then they get sent to an artist and they say, do something on top of that. And so there's not like an amalgamation of somebody tooling around with a guitar and somebody humming along, and what if we do that chord? And then that chord inspires you on what the next phrase is going to do. It was already created, and you're just kind of laying something on top of it.
It's fascinating to get into that, because nowadays, people are recording remotely, right? They're
Absolutely.
not, you can do an entire album and no one ever meets one another in the same room.
Absolutely.
We had Nick Collins on of The Effect, and that album was all done remotely.
Yep.
Everybody recorded their stuff, and amazingly, it sounds like they're all in a room together. They were able to pull that together.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Through some magical way of doing it. But then there's a lot, and it made it sound very unique. But then there are so many, you can just listen and go, wait a minute, I don't think these people have ever performed together. Like, and if you are someone who really loves music and understands the language of music and how it connects, right? I think you're able to tell when you listen to something whether it was created as a group of people together or a bunch of individuals. I think you can actually tell when that happens.
think you can too. And I mean, believe it or not, the majority of my current album, was created as you described because it was started during COVID, and I had no choice in the matter. However, once things opened up, the doors opened, we were able to kind of be in the same room and fine tune and stuff. But you'd be surprised, people that are doing like the mixing and the mastering and those sort of final steps, a lot of times we're not together. We and here's a reason why, because the secret of mixing and mastering is that when you get the file from that expert, you're going to listen to it in different devices anyway. I want to hear it in my car. I know my car. I know what my car speakers sound like, right? I want to hear it on my phone. I want to hear it on my home speakers. I want to hear. So, and they will do the same. So we do that mix that makes sense for that mixing engineer at that point in time. And then you send it out for notes. And those notes kind of go on like, it's the hardest part of making an album, honestly. And I'm sure every artist will say they're never, ever 100% satisfied, but you have to let it go at a certain point because you're going to lose that mixing engineer anyway. So you got to like stop. But I mean, to that point that you're making, it's like, the technology is our friend. It is our friend, but in that we can't always be together. But you've got to find a way to still keep the soul of what it is that you're doing. So I think more so in the creative process than in the post of it. The creative process is super important to still feel organic.
You just hit on something else. And everybody who's here today to watch us, we are going to get to her new song. Oh my, we'll get to talking about her music, but this is really fun. When does the song finish for you? Like, when do you reach that? When do you reach that moment to let go? And I'll tell you why I'm asking this question. And we've done this a couple times now on some of these. I've recently gotten into buying records again for my niece who got a record player. And my record collection, when I had it, was all of the like 12 inches with the B-side being like a demo. I used to love listening to the demos, hearing the final version, so cool. Maybe a remix of the version, and going, okay, I understand that creative. Oh wow, they did this and they did that. And there are contemporary artists who are reimagining their music now. So was it really done? When you're an artist that puts paint on a canvas, the paint dries and it becomes static.
Yes.
But music continues to live. So for you, do you really actually finish the song, right? Or do you have to let go so it can go out in the world, but then you keep working on, like, how's your whole feeling on that? Because I think it's an interesting topic when you talk about that letting go piece of it.
Another great question. I think every artist, if they're being honest with you, is going to say, you kind of never let it go, because unless they have 1,000% control over when, they say, I'm totally done with this mix. A lot of times though, no person is an island. We're all collaborating with, as I was saying, mixing engineers and mastering people. And there's usually a period that you're working to get that done. And so, or you're back-ending into a release date that you've planned, and you've got to turn it in because you got to get on with the liner note, or, all of the stuff and the marketing and everything that goes along with it. So you have to stop somewhere. You have to have an order of songs. You have to, how are you going to turn that in if you don't complete the song? So you're working usually with some kind of a deadline, right? And some kind of way. but I will hear songs on my current album and I'll be like, oh man, it's torture. It's still always torture for me because I'm like, if I could have just had just one more session, I would have tweaked that, but I couldn't do it for, logistical reasons. But that they're just your nitpicky stuff, It's like if you've ever painted your house and you're like, they missed that corner, or I missed that corner or whatever, and it's going to drive you nuts. And you think everyone that comes in sees that, but it's only you that really sees it, right? It's just like that. But you obsess on it. Every time you go in the bathroom, you see that. Do they see that? Oh my God, I gotta, it's like that. But later, songs are songs. That's why we copyright two different things. We copyright the song and we copyright the recording. The recording is in and of itself, it's done. The song is a living, breathing thing. So, you can go out and be somebody that sits with a guitar like Ed Sheeran, and you can play that song, and then he can go and re-record it in a crazy, or license it out to be recorded by a rock band. And that's the beautiful thing about it. People interpret things differently. I hear on social media, I hear great stuff of like classic songs, classic jazz tunes or something that's been reimagined by someone else and doing it in a completely different way, And as a songwriter, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I'm of the idea that it's great when artists continue to evolve the song. I mean, if you think about it, Bruce Springsteen has performed Born to Run how many times?
A million.
Right?
Zillion.
Sting has done Roxanne. Right. So many. You as a fan wouldn't want them to leave that out, but they have to have a reason to keep it in a set, and they've got to, it's almost like instinctual to say, I've got to help this grow and be different, so I'm not delivering just the same thing all the time.
Yes.
And to provide variety so that people come back to see me perform. And there are artists like that. And then there are some that have literally, it's been the same song for over and over, note for note for note. And I like to think about this from the standpoint of it's continued as an evolutionary product or project, and a collaboration, because you probably take that to your band and someone is like, here, I got an idea to paint that corner.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So, I love the collaboration of it all, and it helps helps it grow. On that note, because at some point we were half an hour in already, and we've yet to talk about your new single. So let's get to that.
Okay.
This is the joy of just hanging out.
I know. Great.
So, Oh My is lighting up the adult contemporary charts. It's a beautiful song. Everybody should go out and listen to it, and it's off your recent album, The Moon Knows.
Yes.
Where did Oh My come from, and what was the process that gave birth to it?
Ties right in with what we're talking about. So I can't recall the specific night, but one night I was home, my husband and I, during COVID, and probably had dinner and just, maybe a glass of wine or something, I don't know. And I was just walking through the house, and I heard the hook, which is the chorus of the song. I heard it in my head. And I ran and grabbed my phone to the voice memo to record it really quickly, because that's just how we kind of do it in order to be able to put that down. And I'd already started a process with my good friend, Orbel Babayan, who's an amazing guitar player and played with me. We've played together for a long time. And so we had already started this sort of recording remote process together during COVID. And I sent him the voice memo. And I said, this is the chorus. Give me a minute, I'll play with it. And I said, I don't know, I might be tipsy because I just had a glass of something. I don't know if it was wine or what. I might be tipsy, but this is what I'm feeling right now, I don't have a concept. I don't know what Oh My is about, but this is the hook and the lyric. So then I just sort of toiled around with it a little bit, and then I got the pre-chorus, which is the lead up. And, it's always a blessing when the lyrics and melody come at the same time. That's the greatest gift. Thank you when that happens. So I send that off really quick. And we had already started this process of going back to what I called my roots, which was what we talked about earlier, that sort of really amazing songwriting that came from an organic, I keep using that word because I don't know what else to say, place of instrumentation where it's live, where the drums and the bass and the keyboard, it's everything as though those people are all in the same room together playing. So it's not a track. It's really kind of, just a sponge of stuff coming together. And we were on that path already, recording wise. So I sent him a couple of reference tracks of what back in the day that I liked a lot, that made me feel something. And I wanted that feeling. I said, do not concern yourself, because he had a studio as well. I said, do not concern yourself with what's on the radio. I don't care. I don't care with what's on the radio right now. This is where we're going with this. And he understood the assignment immediately. Like, he sent me back some guitar, because he's amazing with the guitar, and sent me some layered guitar parts with the chord progressions matching exactly what I was singing. I mean, I gave him maybe 2 notes. It was frightening, and then, just some gaps that I hadn't written yet. To leave me room to keep writing. And it came together so quickly and easy. And of course I had to come up with the concept of what Oh My was about. But that's just one of those magical things. It didn't, I don't want to say it didn't take a lot of work, because it does take time to perfect it. But because we bring in live players, we eventually, replace the program drums with a live human that comes in and plays and all of that. But it took time. But the writing of it was super smooth and fun and exciting.
That's excellent. Awesome. Everyone should go out and check out the track and check out the album as well. There are many fabulous tracks. You mentioned something earlier, and it kind of goes into where I want to go next. And this you may never been asked this question before, but I think it's interesting because you have a fabulous personality.
Oh, thank you.
You're very bright and outgoing in your personality.
Thank you.
You've mixed a number of genres, right? Really soulful pop, R&B. I think I read somewhere acid jazz, which I love that, right? And you've brought these genres together and you've gravitated to, but your personality, okay? Because you mentioned major keys, minor keys, all these different pieces of music earlier. If your personality was a mode, what mode would it be?
Oh, man. Wow. Woo, that's heavy. I'm not a major key writer. I'm typically not, but as a human, I'm quite positive. Isn't that interesting? I don't know what that means. Maybe it's like, they say that a lot of comedians are tortured souls inside. Mm-hmm. So they're projecting other than, right? Because that gives them that yin yang. So perhaps that's what's going on with me. I don't know. I'm typically a positive person. Otherwise I wouldn't be in this field, right? I wouldn't do all the things I'm doing. I wouldn't have moved, all of that sort of in pursuit of is a more of an optimist. But typically, I think I'm a lot of times in a more melodic minor key. But I'm not saying everything I do is. But I've been that deeper soul person when it comes to music. I try actually to go against that and do something fun and upbeat, totally fun and upbeat. But typically, I like that sort of soundtracky, deep stuff, It's R&B is rhythm and blues. Blues is not by accident, right?
Right.
So, although I've had a wonderful childhood and I don't think I have too much to whine about, but rhythm and blues dictates what that is, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And plus, I mean, where you grew up originally, I think, the music coming out of Arkansas, and then you had, Tennessee and all those places in the middle of America that kind of R&B, rhythm and blues, yes. Southern blues kind of sound.
Yes.
Before we forget, you're also an actress. So while Oh My is out there making waves, I think you've got a
film?
You're starring in a new movie on Amazon called Dark Acid that recently came out. like, how do you juggle all this? How do you make it happen? And how did that come about?
When I have conversations like this, it makes me sound like I'm insane to try to take all this on, right? And I probably am. So I am a producer on Dark Asset, and that project came to me through a good friend, Lita, who is also a producer on the film, and another lady, Terry Farley, who started this concept of what it would be like to put a chip in the head. And we're now seeing that that's literally what Elon Musk is doing. Right. But this was happening about 6 years ago. She was toying around with this idea, brought it. We wanted to do something with really strong female characters and not just in the background looking cute. You know, we wanted to have a point of view, but make something fun and thought provoking. So as films go, it takes a lot of time. And we, ultimately with my other partner, Narbe, who's an amazing post-production visual person, we put our team together, and again, during COVID, got interrupted with that. But ultimately, when we came out, we shot really quickly. And so my being involved as an actor and also doing the theme song for the movie came together because I was a producer on the film. So we just tried to put our best assets, sorry, pardon the pun, we tried to put our best assets forward as a team, Oh,
that's what teamwork's about.
Yeah.
Right? Well, that's awesome. I just learned about it, so I've got to check it out.
Yeah,
I have
do.
Amazon, so
Love to know
I'll check it out, and I'll let you know. So you got singing, you got producing and acting. What drove you toward your philanthropy for women's health issues?
I, in 1994, was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and that was right in the middle of my kind of experimenting. What am I, am I recording an album? What am I doing? The last thing on my mind, of course, was that I would have a potentially sort of terminal illness and put just an abrupt halt on everything, obviously. And by the grace of God, I'm still here, and that bears a huge amount of responsibility when you survive something like that. So two things, music gave me a healthy distraction to be able to have positive things to focus on at that time. But I also didn't go into like denial, like an ostrich, and stick my head in the sand and pretend, well, that didn't happen, It doesn't see me over here. No, that really happened, and it was devastating and scary. But why? What am I supposed to do with this now? What do I do? How do I process all of this? And for me, it was really the notion that I had an amazing family and I had access to amazing doctors and healthcare, and it kind of felt like a big responsibility to give back. So I, talked about it and was invited to be on a board of directors of a women's clinic in Los Angeles, served on that board for about 12 years. And that's kind of kept me on this sort of nonprofit and, humanitarian and animal activism ever since, to kind of speak up for the voiceless, if you will, people that need that added push.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. I mean, if you think about it in our life, we have one life to give back, right? Yep. And sometimes sometimes we choose not to, and then sometimes something happens in our lives where we decide we have to. Yes. It is a calling. It draws you in. So I think that's great. So we got music, we got film, we got volunteerism. What's next for you? What's on the horizon?
Some sleep? No, I'm just kidding. No, I couldn't. I would go nuts if I retired. I mean, the idea of that is insane for me. I don't know. I'm always recording new stuff, new collaborations with people in different places, and working on where things might go next with music. Experimenting a lot. I actually am getting a little more into some merchandising. There's some things in development on that, which are exciting. And that came to me in a rather organic fashion as well. I didn't go seeking it. Some people actually we're working on some products that I felt really strongly about, and started giving my 2 cents, and they opened up the door to a collaboration. So I'll be able to talk about that hopefully the next time I see you.
We will have to have you back to talk about that, because we're not going to be able to cover all the ground we want to today, for sure. So we're going to do this again,
Yes,
absolutely.
love to.
I've got a couple more before we wrap up.
Okay.
If you had a chance to get in the room to be creative with someone that you haven't before, right? I don't like bucket lists. I think bucket lists, you just go do stuff in life. But if there was one person that you could get into a studio and write with for a day, who would that be? Why?
Sting. And I think he just carries with him so much wisdom, and he never adhered to one label or one thing, which I always took to heart. Now, there are some people that have passed away, so I can't mention them because they're not with us anymore. If they were, then I would mention them. But who's still with us, I would say Sting. I got to work with his brother, Stuart. I worked in the studio with Stuart Copeland, which was, not his brother, his bandmate, and which was like his brother. But that was cool. But no, I would say Sting, just because there's a knowing that this guy has, and he's inspired me. Although I've had many people inspire me, but as a lyricist as well, he's an incredible storyteller. And again, I don't think he defines himself by any kind of labels, which I've always loved.
Yeah, no, that's fabulous. And you're not the only person who said that on this on the hang. So
Nice.
And you never know who watches, so you never know who the phone could ring from next.
That's right.
As we kind of turn toward wrapping things up, as everyone who watched this know, I am big on supporting artists.
Yes.
While you can rent music
Yes.
in a subscription, purchasing music, owning it, and supporting an artist in a way that is somewhat significant to them is important. So I think I counted like close to 30 different tracks on like Apple Music. Plus your albums. Go purchase her music. Go support her endeavors. It's important. We need to support our artists to bring us more art. It's an investment that you're making. But beyond that, I always like to know 2 or 3 artists that are your earworms right now. Who are people that you're super digging? It doesn't have to be someone huge. It could be someone local. It could be a friend. But whose music can we talk about real quick that you think would mean something to other people if they listen to it?
So the cool thing about technology is it kind of starts to know what you like. The AI kind of starts to know what you like and brings it to you, which is a great bonus. It's like, why is this in my thing? Oh, because they think I'm going to like it. You were right. I do. There's an artist named Madison Ryan Ward. She is how would you define her? She is kind of a rootsy. She has some kind of gospel leanings, but incredible voice, stripped down sound, very moving. I love her voice. I love what she does. Let's see. Oh man, there's just so many. There's a girl named Sinead Harnett, who's also an independent. I'm picking more independent artists. She's fabulous. Oh man, there's so many that I follow now. There's what is that guy's last name? I don't want to say it wrong. I now it's going to bother me because there's a few that come at me and I'm like, oh, what's his name? What's that girl's name? Right now I'm going, what is her last? I know the first name, but I can't remember the last because I follow them. I don't have to worry about it, I just go there and they're there. Well, you could see Shani Rigsbee, who I follow on my Instagram, and then you'll know these are the people I like, right?
Right,
but
right.
there's also some people that are current, that are that I still am inspired by. I love Bruno Mars. I love everything Bruno Mars does. He pushes the envelope. He takes you back to the old sounds, and that's exactly what I love to do too now. And I that gives permission now. You no longer have to explain it, why you're doing this. It's like, because we're artists, that's what we do, and hopefully you're along with the ride. I think Billie Eilish is doing incredible things. I listen to Clearly Sting, and so many. But I think, like a lot of people, you go in, you seek the music kind of for the mood that you're in, right? If you're in a more rebellious, upbeat mood, you're going to pick something else than when you're home and making dinner. So I kind of seek that.
Well, here's what we're going to have to do. We're going to plan another one of these very soon,
Yes.
because I want to learn about how your collaboration became a collaboration of life with your husband. I want to talk more about some of your songs. Everybody, this has been a fun hang. Shani, I thank you so much for joining us.
Thank
Please
you.
leave comments. We'll get them to her. Subscribe. Tell your friends. Buy her music. Support the artists who are here on the hang, because we want them to have their livelihood so they can come back and share more with us. And like I said, we're going to do this again very soon because there's a lot more to talk about. So Shani, thank you so much for joining us. Everybody, please subscribe, share, and be well. Be well out there.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.